Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. Chuck Warren out of studio today. But before we get started with our first guest here, we've got a great show ahead for you. One quick favor. Leave Breaking Battlegrounds a 5-star review and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and follow Breaking Battlegrounds on social media for more. Now, getting started for today, our first guest, someone I am very excited to talk to, Jay Lapeyre. He was on an episode of Defending Ideas, an episode talking about what the Declaration of Independence still teaches us. Chuck and I both saw this. We got very excited. We really love this. So, Jay Lapeyre, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And so you are the CEO of Laitram LLC and a board chair for the Cato Institute and Atlas Society, two organizations I have tremendous respect for. Before we get talking about the Declaration of Independence and what our founding documents mean as we approach the quinticentennial here, tell us how you got into this issue. What drove you to start talking about the Declaration?
Well, I think as we all witness the partisan nature of sort of the political world today and how the culture has been infected by the polarization left and right. I think there's a huge percent of people who feel that I'm not fully on board with any side of this, and that politics is kind of a win-lose, all or nothing, proposition. And as it infects the culture, it kind of pushes out independent thinking. And we reflected on, well, what is the way to create something that we're for, as opposed to only knowing what we're against. And as we group got together and we began to talk about how do we unite the secular liberty people and the religious liberty people, we came up with a statement. And then we said, that's kind of a neat idea, what we're for, parking our differences and building on what we're for, and then thinking about, well, the founders actually did that. They did it pretty well. So let's think of a little bit about how we could leverage the model that they generated, and especially focus on the meaning of the Declaration, because that's the language that speaks to universal truths, moral truths, to regain what I'll call the moral high ground in these conversations that seem to mostly gravitate to food fights about which group you're for, and without much principle involved. And that doesn't say that there aren't better arguments or worse arguments within the different groups. It just means that as a whole, it's very difficult for people to think independently and still be inside of one of the political tribes. So what we said was, park all of that. Let's not have a food fight about the conflicted histories of the founders, the personal foibles and hypocrisies, and let's not have any of that. Let's just deal with what they said in the language first, because in order to love or hate something, you should first understand it. And if we do that, we think that we're going to find that there's a lot more in common that we have, that we share with each other, and from that we can build. And we said the best tool for doing that is civil discourse. So it was all just it was an iterative stepping in piles, learning as we go, but finding that there is a real interest in people engaging in ideas, recognizing that truth matters, that ideas matter, and that truth is hard to discover, but through diligence and work, and a bit of objectivity, you can accomplish a lot. And it's about me. It's about my independent journey to knowledge and understanding, not my appeal to authority.
And that's one of the things I've always loved about the Declaration is it was clear that the people who wrote it, if you go back and look at some of their own writings at the time, they understood that they were flawed beings, right? And so they were trying desperately to write a document that would do what you just talked about, that would last for generations because it moved beyond their individual failings and addressed those broader moral, societal issues and values and laid down a path forward. How important is it that we really focus on that, frankly, on the flexibility of what they created for us.
I think that's huge because the whole question that we have struggled with is what unites us as a nation. And if we recognize that the Declaration was doing two things and maybe more, but from a layman, because I'm not a philosopher, I'm just, they were declaring independence from Great Britain, but they're not the first, oppressed country or colony or whatever to declare independence. What they didn't need to do, but did, was say, we're also going to make a declaration about the principles that apply to every human being everywhere in the world on this planet for all time. And that was extraordinarily controversial. They knew it, but yet they also said we're going to take this opportunity to claim the moral high ground in doing that, and to set an aspirational standard. And to me, that's the exciting part. That
Mm-hmm.
when you reflect on what these guys did, what these people achieved, yes, they were limited by the times and the thinking at the times, but they were the breakthrough to the next level following the enlightenment of human progress, and it's just an incredibly exciting journey. So yes, I think exactly what you said. It's critically important that we focus on what I'll call those timeless moral truth claims in the Declaration. And that's the whole purpose here. Is just look at that one sentence. Walter Isaacson calls that the greatest sentence ever written in his book, and I think he may well be right that that I would be open to challenge because I'm not a historian, but I would be curious if someone has come up with anything better ever.
Well, absolutely. And so before we get on to the greatest sentence and the challenge, because I actually kind of wanted to save that for the second segment. I thought that was so profound what you've been talking about and proposing there. And I would encourage every single American, their family, their friends, to take that challenge amongst themselves this weekend. Really dig in on it, because I think that is absolutely brilliant. But I wanted to hit on something you were just talking about also. The fact that while a lot of people criticize the morals, the living morals of the people who wrote this document and the ones that wrote the Constitution, they knew they were falling short of what they wrote on paper, didn't they?
I think most and perhaps all did. I don't know how to put ourselves in the minds of sort of a uniform mindset in a group of 56
Right, right.
courageous independent. But yes, I think that is an accurate way to think about it. That overwhelmingly they knew that this was a journey, and that they were falling far short of achieving that in many, if not all, cases.
Where did the impetus to write this moral document come from? Because as you pointed out, lots of places have had independence movements and have declared independence, and sent a letter to their former leaders or kings or whatever,
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, we're done with you." What was the impetus for the exposition of moral values in this document?
In the Declaration, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I think that the Lockean sort of revolution, and then the popularization of it with Thomas Paine. What Jefferson said years later was, when someone accused him of not writing anything original, he said that was exactly my purpose. I was simply trying to reflect what I'll call the spirit of the American mind that was and he wouldn't have claimed that that was all Americans, but he would have said that's the leading American thinking. That's the direction that was growing and becoming more and more. And that was based on Locke. And I think that was based on the influence that Paine had. He sold a tremendous what was it, Common Sense or whatever
Hmm.
that was. So I think that that in doing this, they were trying to um, what's the right way to put this? They recognize that we need intellectual fuel, we need passion, we need something that keeps us together that isn't, and this is the way to do it, by uniting everyone in this claim. And I still believe that we underrate the importance of moral power in all of our conversations.
Mhm.
And again, back to the idea that the truth and moral and ethics. And I think that's what we're saying, that if we, Franklin had a great quote. He said that an ethical, no, a virtuous and industrious people may be cheaply governed. And I think that fits the idea that if we expect to have a freedom, and we expect to, and we're not going to be a culture that actually earns it through what I'll call responsibility, and the ethical culture of the crowd. That just can't happen, because as long as it's simply about power and not about what's right, we can't find common ground, because we're each a threat to each other, and as opposed to an asset to each other. So
That's a fantastic point. We have just about a minute left in this segment, and then we're going to be coming back with more from Jay Lapeyre here in just a few moments, folks. Definitely stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to get on to the Declaration Challenge, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I think it's very important for people to understand. But as a last word in this segment, Jay, do people discount the Declaration as a founding document? People talk about the Constitution all the time, the Bill of Rights, but a lot of our founding in the early laws of this country, the direction was informed by the Declaration.
yes, and I think that was a, a direction that the legal direction the Supreme Court took, and obliterating pieces of it, and
Hmm.
the Constitution were only enabled by not thinking about the purpose of the Constitution, which was to limit the powers of the federal government and to reserve the powers maximum extent possible for the states or to the people. And then ultimately the 14th Amendment would have said, okay, maximum power to the people. But I think that had they been forced in some way to make the Declaration a preamble to the Constitution, which I believe was what was intended, or at least assumed, then I think we would have had more trouble looking at that document in a disaggregated, the Constitution in a disaggregated way. But I'm not
100%. And Breaking Battlegrounds coming right back. All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Continuing on now with Jay Lapeyre, we are talking about, obviously, with the 250th birthday of America coming up here, we are talking about the Declaration. Jay, you have something. You put out a challenge, or been working with some folks who are doing a challenge around the Declaration. Tell us a little bit about that challenge.
Well, the Free Society Coalition, which is the group that I co-founded with others, and we've built a truly just that, a coalition of organizations. And our goal is not to be the central clearinghouse. Our goal is to enable all of those who want to use these tools to use them in as effective way as they know how. And the challenge that we were trying to consider was what's the easiest, simplest, shortest on ramp to thinking about these questions. So we said, let's take the greatest sentence ever written, and let's actually see if we can think seriously about it for a little bit of time. Let's give it an hour. Take a what I'll call a civil discourse mindset, where I'm not trying to go in and change someone else's mind. I'm simply trying to understand it for myself. And I'm going to use the thinking from the conversation, the thinking of the best thinking of those engaged in the discussion, to influence my own, but not to sacrifice any part of my independence, but to inform it. So we're saying take an hour, gather with family, friends, and just read the text. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does that text mean? And we can quarrel about the hypocrisies which we talked about earlier, or the
Mhm,
lack of achieving it, but this is what they wrote. What does
mhm.
this language? This is what does this language mean? What does it mean to say that truths are self-evident? And I had this conversation with my 8-year-old granddaughter last night, and we're looking forward to continuing it because I don't think she's quite in for a full hour, but but we did get through it. She likes it, and we're optimistic that we can really continue to explore it. So I'm not necessarily recommending it at that age, but I am saying that this is achievable for something that is a very easy conversation, and we give you all the tools. If you go to the Free Society Coalition, there's a 3-step process. Read the text, reflect, discuss the text, and then reflect on the meaning you're independently. And I think this begins what I think is a lifelong journey and a mindset and a recognition that we as human beings have a tremendous potential to make each other better, and left alone to our own devices, we seek out inspiration. We admire achievement. We admire people who help us, and I think that that's the nature of what I'll call the moral arc that human nature has always had, unless the incentives are perverted the way they have
Right.
been. We don't think about them. So I'm really excited about it because I think it's an on ramp and it's a challenge that I think is available to anyone who simply wants to get past the fireworks and the parades and all of that, which I think is totally appropriate. But you have to get to a point where you say, now, what was that all about? And let's have a conversation as a way to start.
But fundamentally, I mean, really, that should all be about repairing the frayed fabrics of our society as a way to come together. And I
Exactly.
think you have highlighted another great way to do that.
Exactly. I think that spending time on what you hate and spending time on what you're against and spending time in frustration is probably not it's I wouldn't call that the recipe for happiness, you know.
No,
You know?
no, 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 no.
Right.
You can meet two people, and one who really tries to emphasize the good that happens to them and around them throughout the day, and one who dwells on the negative. It's very easy to tell you which person most people are going to enjoy being around, right? Um,
Exactly. Exactly. And
yeah,
what's exciting about that, Sam, is that example actually influences even the people who are the negative ones,
right.
because they start to recognize this isn't working for me. I want to get to a little higher class of crowd. Let me
Well,
let me figure out how to do that.
and in reading through your challenge, I really thought about this is a great way if you're in one of those families that's kind of been torn apart a little bit around the politics and you're coming together for this long weekend. This is a great way to maybe bridge some of those gaps and depoliticize the things we're talking about in the future that we all want to have. I think everyone in America wants to have a great future for this country and all of our citizens,
Yeah.
but
No,
it's just how
yeah.
we get there, right? Now,
Yes.
how we get there, I'm going to go back to this greatest sentence because this is my curveball question. The pursuit of happiness.
Hmm.
I have always contended that this is not just a nebulous pursuit of a general generic state of happiness, but they're actually talking about the trade system, the caste trade system from Europe, where you couldn't get into pursuit being a career. Am I you like this stuff as much as I do? So am I crazy with that position?
No, I know. I think you're absolutely correct that the pursuit of my happiness is something that I have to bring my best thinking to, and I can't be. I mean, it's my life, and if my skill set enables me to do something, I should be able to compete in it because I need liberty. And then, so to support my life, I have to have the liberty and the means of achieving. And they're saying more than just bare survival. We're saying make it a great life, make it the best life you can make it, have a sense of moral ambitiousness. But that includes economic activity. It includes win-win relationships and trade that helps create prosperity. So, no, I'd say I'm all in on that, Sam.
I love it. My view is that the Declaration really was a love letter to the rest of the world. And that's how I've kind of viewed it in history. It was us saying, listen, this is the great vision that we have, not only for ourselves, but for all of you, that everyone should be able to share, everyone on this planet should be able to share in these values. And we're going to do our best to present and uphold them.
I love that. I love that concept. I think that is a love letter to the world, a love letter to humankind. And it's one that imperfectly practiced. And this is the beauty of what you said earlier is stay away from the politics. Let's stay upstream with the ethics and the cultural implications, because we all want a society that respects the dignity of each individual. We all want a society where every person is challenged and enabled and to achieve his or her best life and to create that. And I think this starts that mindset of, gee, don't we agree on that? Now let's have deeper, better conversations about what those implications might be. But in every case, it starts with me. If I'm not able to set an example, and if I'm a crappy person.
If you can't set the example, you can't lead. Jay Lapeyre, thank you so much for joining us. Breaking Battlegrounds coming right back.
Thanks so much.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Folks, private student loan debt in the United States totals about $300 billion. $45 billion of that is distressed. If you have a distressed or defaulted private student loan that others won't touch, you need to get a hold of Y-Refi today. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. It's not a debt settlement company. They work with you individually, tailoring each loan to your specific situation. You will not be calling a faceless call center. Y-Refi can reduce your monthly payment, guarantees interest rates under 6%. It's affordable. It's important relief if you need it. Give them a call today. You can get a hold of them at Y-Refi at yrefi.com. So that's YREFY.com, or give them a call at 877-400-9989.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. With us now is Andrew Kerr, an investigative reporter with one of our favorite publications, the Washington Free Beacon. You can follow him on X at Andrew Kerr, Kerrnc. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back on.
So when people ask you what you do for a living, do you say I'm a reporter, or do you say you're an investigative reporter?
Yeah, investigative reporter.
Do people get quiet? Do people get quiet around you when you say that?
Well, I work in it's political investigative reporting,
Sure,
so it's
sure.
it's either they're going to love what I do or they're going to hate what I do. So there's a strategy to kind of dripping the details. Yeah.
So Paul Sperry today from Real Clear Politics posted that, quote, "It's no coincidence that Democrat Senator Ruben Gallego and Democrat Representative AOC and Jasmine Crockett, who've had major red flags in their financial disclosures, have all requested 90-day extensions to file their 2025 disclosure statements." We're going to talk about congressional finance and candidate profiles. Why would they be doing that? Tell our audience why they're doing that now.
So it's kind of just become regular practice. Almost every lawmaker gets a 90-day extension to file their financial disclosures. So they are due in April, but it's like this 90-day. They have to request it, and they always get it. So I mean, in effect, these things are actually just due in August when that 90-day extension is up. That's when it's got to be over 95% of lawmakers file at that time. But these are the same lawmakers that are talking about. I mean, they want to limit their colleagues from trading stocks. They want to raise taxes on the wealthy, and it's the bargain they make. They get to write laws that affect everyone in the country. What they have to give up for that, though, is disclosing their financial affairs to the public, so that we know what they're invested in, so that we can ensure that there's no conflict of interest. And I think it is worth noting that almost all of them want to wait as long as possible before disclosing that information.
Yeah. So you wrote a great piece called "Row Me the Money: How Progressive Class Warrior Khanna lives like an oligarch he fights with he has an in-home elevator, $190,000 Range Rover, and a family-owned golf course." I mean, there's a lot to say there in that headline. And then you posted today, I believe, that a vast majority of House lawmakers file their financial disclosures in digital format, which you posted and showed an example. But Khanna chose to file it with the analog checkbox, which they've been using forever. Why do you think he does that? Then let's talk about your article. Why does he use the analog checkbox versus the old, let's do a digital format so everybody can read it cleanly?
Yeah, I think he's doing that. This is my speculation, but I mean he's incredibly wealthy. I mean his children are in elementary school, and they own significant stakes in 3 private golf clubs in Ohio that charge membership initiation fees like ranging up to $45,000. They earned upwards of $2 million from these golf courses in 2024 alone. This is not new information. He's been reporting this in his financial disclosure essentially every year since he's been in Congress. But since he files in this old analog checkbox format, these aren't text searchable documents. It's just gone unnoticed for all these years, and until I spent a good 5-6 hours last week just kind of transcribing his 2024 financial disclosure from these like Byzantine tables into something that's actually readable. And I noticed like he's saying that his kids own 3 golf courses. I mean, this is the guy that's been going on TV, hooting and hollering about how bad the rich are who hoard their wealth and engage in financial speculation. Like, I mean, come on, dude, your kids have 3 golf courses. Like, you're talking about yourself here. But yeah, I think why else would he not file in the digital format, which it's if you know what you're doing, it's really easy to get that into an Excel table so you can like analyze rank the assets by highest to lowest. But no, he files in this manner that really just effectively seems like a way to make it much more difficult for the public to discern what he actually owns. Yeah.
Did he have wealth before he got married?
Well, now I know that he worked as an attorney, but all of it, I'm all of his assets. So his 2024 financial disclosure, he discloses over 3,000 individual assets. They are all owned by either his wife or his kids. So like Rokon. Now that doesn't mean that Rokon himself is not wealthy. He's obscenely
No,
wealthy. I mean,
no. I mean, this is wealth, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, but if it's your wife's and your like 8-year-old children that you're offloading all your assets to, like it's his. Like it's his money. It's his family's money.
let's stop you there. We're going to continue this on the next segment. We're with Andrew Kerr. He's the investigative reporter for the Free Beacon. You can follow the Free Beacon on X at Free Beacon. And you can also follow Andrew at Andrew Kerr, KERRNC. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. Like a tongue twister. Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We are going to continue our conversation with Andrew Kerr. He is the investigative reporter on the Free Beacon. He wrote a great article, Row Me the Money, How Progressive Class Warrior Ro Khanna Lives Like the Oligarchs He Fights. So, and I suggest that we read that article, and we'll post it on our social media. You can also find it at the Washington Free Beacon, which is at freebeacon.com. So what are 4 or 5 things about this article that you think stand out, and what are a couple things that surprised you as you were doing the research?
Yeah, so I mean, like, why we should care about this? Right. Obscenely wealthy politician. There's many of them, but Ro Khanna he's a California Democratic representative. He's made a name, he like self-appointed himself as like the leader in the fight against the oligarchy, or what he calls the Jeffrey Epstein class of essentially ultra wealthy people that hoard their wealth and then use their wealth to influence public policy and kind of invest in certain funds that aren't available to the regular public that give them a leg up against the working class.
Right.
What my reporting has found is that Ro Khanna is essentially talking about himself. I mean, he is a lawmaker, so he is in power, but also like he's hoarding wealth as well. I mean, he lives in an excessive four-story home with a 4-story elevator. His wife drives a $190,000 Range Rover, and his kids, I mean, my goodness, they have large stakes in 3 private golf clubs, and they also own a significant stake in a wealth management firm that says it manages 65 billion in assets under management. I mean, this is like that and this is all wealth that he has received and his family has received from his father-in-law, who actually did the work. Who he was an Indian immigrant, says he came over to the United States with $12 in his pocket, formed an auto parts transmission distribution firm, and became obscenely wealthy. And now they've structured their family wealth. They've poured up to $73 million for Khanna's children into irrevocable trusts, which is it's a wealth transfer vehicle that could shield them from future inheritance taxes. Because Ro Khanna is that rich that his family would have to contend with inheritance taxes. And so when you have that happening, and then you also have Ro Khanna talking about how bad it is for the ultra wealthy to be evading to pay their own taxes, and you have all this undue influence. He's talking about himself, but his proposal is like he wants to go after the billionaires, which is, I guess, fine. You're free to do that, and he's talking about how bad the billionaires. But Ro Khanna himself is easily worth several hundred millions of dollars. And his proposals he does not want to touch people with that sort of wealth, which is, an obscene amount of wealth. He only wants to go after the billionaires. So he lives this oligarchic lifestyle. His children who aren't even out of elementary school yet, will never have to work a day in their lives if they don't want to. And yet he's the one going out there calling himself a champion of the working class and how bad it is that the billionaires are dodging taxes. I think it's one of the most egregious examples of hypocrisy in Congress that I've personally ever seen in my 10 years of reporting. It's it's pretty wild, just how the scale of the hypocrisy here.
Well, if you confronted him on this to his face, I mean, did you reach out for his office for comment?
I did, yes.
And of course, they didn't do anything back, right?
They declined to comment.
If you were able to sit down with him, how do you think he would justify his positions with what his wealth is and what he's done? I mean, he's not doing, and folks need to understand, he's not doing anything illegal. He's following the letter of the law, but these are the letters of the law he complains about all the time. So how do you think he'd respond to you on this?
Well, how he's responded to other reporters in the past is that, so again, the wealth comes from his father-in-law. And so he says that this is all, trusts that the father-in-law has established for his wife and kids from before we got married in 2015, which is partly true. His wife does have trusts that originate in the 90s, but there's also trust for his children that are dated in 2020. So he's been doing this since getting into Congress.
Which I assume he has some say in. I mean, she's just not doing it willy-nilly without them talking.
Well, he claims he doesn't have any say in it. Another aspect of this I forgot to mention is that Ro Khanna is one of the loudest champions in Congress of we need to ban members of Congress from being able to trade stocks.
Right.
Ro Khanna holds the crown as the most prolific stock trader in Congress. He made well over 4,000 trades in 2025 alone, much more than any other member of Congress. For the estimated total of those stock trades is $53 million worth of trading volume. And yet he's out there saying that we need to ban members of Congress from trading stocks. Now, he claims that all these trades are being made in his children and wife's trusts and that he has, no say in it. I don't think, though, that he has an answer to these other, as I mentioned, his wife and kids own stakes in this massive wealth management firm that's based in Cleveland, Ohio. And these golf courses, I can't get over the golf courses. For someone who spends so much time complaining about the oligarchy, how bad they are, how do you find an oligarch? Is that when your kids own 5 golf courses? How many golf courses is too much, Mr. Ro Khanna? Maybe they can do fine with just one private golf course that pays them, up to $1 million a year instead of 3 golf courses that could provide several millions every year. I just don't think he has an answer for that because, I mean, it does that is peak oligarch behavior right there. It just is.
Well, it isn't. How would a Democrat activist who loves his spiel on, tax the billionaires, how would they justify this? I mean, it's interesting.
I've had some comments on my social media posts yesterday from some folks who are like, well, I don't get what the big deal is here because it sounds like Ro Khanna is proposing measures that would increase his own family's taxes. But no, he's not. He has he is a centimillionaire. His net worth, his family's net worth is in the hundreds of millions. Ro Khanna has structured his policies only to tax the billionaires. And so he's obscenely wealthy. but not wealthy enough to be impacted by his own proposed policies.
Or with Andrew Kerr, investigative reporter at Free Beacon. All right, you wrote another great article, which is of interest to us here in Arizona. Arizona Democrat Joanna Mendoza now claims she's not a millionaire after all. Drops her net worth by 93% in updated disclosure. Folks, just so you know, she is running against Juan Ciscomani. And Juan's seeking his third term, and she is a former Marine Corps veteran, but what she really is a political consultant who works for operations like George Soros foundations and so forth. So tell us about what she's doing and why she has dropped her net worth by 93%.
Yeah, so I did a story a few weeks ago just kind of covering her ties to like the Democratic nonprofit industrial complex with George Soros. And this is another financial disclosure. So Mendoza reported, and congressional candidates have to report their finances to the public too. And so she reported that she owned a stake in this Arizona consulting firm called Radar Strategies. It's worth $1 million to $5 million. And this firm works with a lot of key Democrats in the state.
Right.
And now a lot of those Democrats and groups that she worked with as a consultant are now supporting her political campaign. So I reported that, if someone owns assets that are worth millions of dollars, and the debts don't, and they don't have millions of dollars worth of debts, then that makes someone a millionaire. If you own things that are worth millions of dollars, then you're a millionaire.
Right.
And the Mendoza campaign really did not like that. They were like, no, this is false reporting. You need to correct it. She's not a millionaire. I'm like, well, I'm just quoting from the financial disclosures. And
Right.
so they were like, okay, well, we're just going to file a new financial disclosure claiming that her stake in the firm is actually worth no more than $100,000. And there's a couple other additions to the financial disclosure, like she had failed initially to report that she owned a rental property that she's earning income from. But yeah, she just reduces like essentially her net worth on paper by 93%. And then sends me an email saying, okay, we demand that you correct your reporting because now we have proof she's not a millionaire because of this new financial disclosure, which like really isn't how this works.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean, why does this matter? Like the district that Mendoza is running in is one of the few remaining swing districts in the country.
Right.
She's presenting herself as a working class. She grew up picking cotton and
Yes.
in the farms with her poor family, had to rely on food stamps. And she kind of just stumbled into politics after a long career in the military. And she knows to play the working class, yada yada, which that messaging is kind of harmed by her own self-disclosure that she's a millionaire and through her lucrative political consulting work. So it's kind of humorous though that she decided to file a new financial disclosure, revising the numbers down. But I think it really does point that this is a huge sticking point for her wealth, her proximity to power, like that all goes against the image that she's trying to cultivate, going for this swing district in Arizona.
Well, I don't think. First of all, I think Juan's worth around 500, 600,000. So she's not. She obviously didn't want to be a millionaire over him. He's truly came from. He's an immigrant. Dad was a bus driver. I mean, he's like literally the American dream story. So I don't get any sense. I mean, I don't think she's even an immigrant. So she's trying to play this poor me story to compete with Juan. And I hope Juan just keeps pushing what he's done on it because, look, Democrats here make just tons of money. I mean, the money that comes into the state from, I think 75% of all the money for Democrat campaigns in this state comes from out of state. And she's made a lot of money on this. And it's funny that she's just trying to hide it. And, if she's not a partner anymore, I mean, I get it. That probably would drop it, but it's funny how quickly they try to change things to change the narrative. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I think it just goes to it's an authenticity problem, which I think that a lot of voters really detest when don't try to make yourself into something that you aren't. I mean, after she left the military, she had a kind of a brief but really successful political consulting career, and now she's running for Congress. And being worth between $1 and $5 million, like that's well off. That's not Ro Khanna money.
Right.
That's you had a good career, and now you're moving up to Congress.
Right.
And but it's just when you start to try to rewrite history, what she did here with this latest filing, then I mean, it just I I don't think it's a good look at all. And the margins in this race are going to be tight. So something like this could matter in the end, when it may be just a few thousand votes that decide who gets a seat.
You're an investigative reporter. What are some things that are you preparing a new article on someone new? I mean, tell us a little bit about what you got going on in the future that we can be looking for.
Yeah, I may have more on Ro Khanna. Yeah, that's a well that we're still tapping into.
You're going to keep tapping that.
Yeah. Gavin Newsom, a week or two ago, he announced that federal investigators have launched an investigation into him.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of what California has a system called behested payments. So lawmakers in California can legally request, an organization, hey, can you donate, $1 million to this charity, on my behalf?
Yeah.
And Gavin Newsom has, I did a story on this last year where showing that a lot of the behested contributions that Gavin Newsom has made, the donating organizations like Native American tribes that in the state that are seeking favors from Gavin Newsom, those tribes are making behested contributions to charities that are operated by Gavin Newsom's wife, and that she receives compensation from. So there's speculation that this investigation into Gavin Newsom could be related to those behested payments. And I've done some behested payments work in the past. Working, and so trying to I may have some stuff coming up on that as well. But those are the type of stories that I go after, kind of like the political money stories. But I also like reporters, we kind of operate on a hive mind where we all kind of chase the big fish.
Right.
And I've just always I don't see any value in me being the 100th reporter chasing after whatever Trump has done. With Ro Khanna, like I mentioned at the onset, a lot of this stuff has been sitting out there in public for years, and just nobody has noticed it. So that's kind of the opportunities that I look for, what's kind of hiding out in plain sight that just everyone has missed.
Exactly. Andrew, thank you a million for joining us. We hope to have you back on again soon, and have a great July 4th weekend. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back.
Thanks so much.
Hi, kids.
Remember your dreams? All the future plans you made? Has private student loan debt destroyed those dreams? It doesn't have to. Why Refi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can reduce your payment, you can get your life back, and they don't even care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call Why Refi today. Let's go!
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest, Brenda Hypocrisy. She is the Assistant Director and Research Fellow in the Heritage Foundation's B. Kenneth Simon Center for American Studies. And as we're dedicating the show to our great country's 250th birthday, Brenda's an expert on our beginnings, and we're excited to have her on. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Brenda, let's first talk about something here. You have been the leader of the Heritage Guide to Historic Sites. Folks, you can find that on historicsites.heritage.org. We will put this on our website and boost it this weekend. It looks like a great thing to share with your kids and grandkids, and just look it over yourself. So tell us about this site, tell us about the project, and what do we hope to accomplish with it?
Yep. So the Heritage Guide to Historic Site is a website that the main page is a map that pinpoints and evaluates historic sites all around the country. We have about 130 sites with at least one in every state, and they include things like Mark Twain's house, battlefields, presidential homes, museums, with the intent to encourage Americans to go to these places to celebrate America 250, especially this summer. So the map pinpoints it. There's nothing like it. And then each site also receives a grade of A, B, or C based on accuracy and comprehension, proportionality, and ideological bias.
Interesting. So how long did it take you, since you put this together, how long did it take to put this project together? And why, and here's a question for me. Why is it important that people understand these historic sites? What will it do to develop their bond and their knowledge of our great country?
Yeah, so we've been working about it for a year. We introduced the 13 original colonies past October, and then for Washington's birthday this year, we released the full map. But we intend to add to it over the years and update it. This is a living, breathing project. And the reason I think these places are important is because this is something American families do together. I remember, particularly, I grew up in Pennsylvania. Gettysburg is the first place that I remember going to, and I still remember that. And looking at the cyclorama and how that just captured my imagination. So this is something that Americans do together to continue to educate ourselves about our history, about the things that make up the American character. And each of these places tells their own unique story, and then they combine to tell the American story. So this is an activity that helps us remember who we are as a people.
What outside of D.C., what are some of these legacy sites that, as you did your research and picked them, that stood out to you, that you found just fascinating?
So, Mount Vernon is one of my favorites because they do such a wonderful job remembering the legacy of America's indispensable man. So Gettysburg, I already mentioned, that has a special place in my heart. Speaker Newt Gingrich did that evaluation, so it's just terrific.
Wow.
But one that I just love is Noah Webster's house in Connecticut. It's a smaller, lesser-known site, but Noah Webster was of a Webster Dictionary's fame. And that site and the evaluator talks about the importance of language for forming a great nation and the American character. So it's some of those places that you don't necessarily think of. Battlefields and forts kind of automatically come to mind, but these lesser known locations that really highlight who we are and some of the things that you might not expect.
So I see here you have picked the old Idaho Penitentiary. Why did we pick that one?
It's the most significant place in Idaho. So we have at least one site in
Poor
every
Idaho.
state.
Poor Idaho.
For Idaho, yeah. Some states were easier to find places in than others. Alaska was a bit of a tough one. So they are more concentrated in the Northeast, is what you would expect. But we wanted, if possible, to be able to find one site in every state, because we believe in federalism, of course, but also hopefully folks will be able to find a place within driving distance so that they can go on these trips this summer.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for putting that together. I'm actually going to send this out to many friends with kids and grandkids this weekend and look it over myself. So thank you for doing that. So Brenda, you wrote a great piece on the Daily Signal called "Why the American Colonists Rebelled." Could you tell our audience about the article and why did they rebel? I mean, I read it, I found it fascinating, but tell our audience what happened and what brought this up.
Thank you. So there's the history of the American Revolution and leading up to the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration is both a beginning and a culmination. So what happens, the 7-Year War, Britain declares war with France. They're war for 7 years, and they accumulate a huge amount of debt. And they begin to look to the American colonies as a solution to that debt. And of course, they start to tax the colonists. And the colonists rebel because they have been long used to governing themselves, and this violates the principle of consent of the governed. So that sets us on this track of moves and counter moves between the British and between the American colonies. And ultimately, the Americans rebel because they believe in self-government, and they want to be citizens. and not subject. So this is a matter of principle, of not only about the rights of Englishmen, but of natural rights and of natural law. And this makes America both a revolutionary idea, because this has never been done before, but also something that's eternal, because it's grounded in these truths that don't change over time.
I never thought about this till you wrote this, and they imposed the Sugar and Stamp Acts of 1764 and 1765. Why was the Sugar and Stamp Act so offensive to the colonists?
Well, it's not offensive, or it's not significant in terms of dollar amounts. Like the
Right.
stamps were actually pretty small, right?
Right.
The tax was small in terms of currency. But the Stamp Act in particular struck at America's principles, because you would need a stamp for pamphlets and almanacs, for those sorts of documents to circulate. And that's the way communication happened in the American colonists. So the Stamp Act was actually a violation of freedom of speech and impeded deliberation. And that is something that America traditionally has really cared about. The number of newspapers in America compared to other countries was quite high. And that's, of course, something that we still value today. And we think of something like Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And that's the way the ideas of the revolution spread. So the Stamp Act was not simply about this money, but it was about the principle of the matter.
You wrote also in this article that many of the ideas of the revolution spread through the churches to 70 to 80% of the colonists who attended services on a regular basis, which I find fascinating. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he's talking about why we don't have this civic unity anymore. I said, well, you don't have people going to church like they once did. You don't have your Lions clubs. You don't have your Rotary clubs. You mean all these things that brought people together, right? What role do you see for churches and religion in improving society and government today? Is there a role for them still, or is it no longer necessary?
Oh, that's so necessary. I mean, churches, Alexis de Tocqueville very famously observed that America has all these civic institutions, right? Civic associations, rather than automatically turning to the government. We do things ourselves, and we take care of problems within our own communities, within our own states, before we kind of reach that highest bar of looking to the federal government and a law to do things. And that's part of how we practice the art of self-government, that it inculcates a confidence in ourselves that we as everyday citizens are capable of doing these things and don't automatically have to turn to the government to solve our problems. And the sad part is that once we stop exercising that, we forget very quickly, and we think that we're no longer capable of doing these things. So that's one role for religious institutions. The other, more broadly, is that when in George Washington's farewell address, he says that, some people are able to come to morality through reason alone, but that's the exception. And that it's a mistake to rely for national morality apart from religion. That for most people, that's where they get their moral structure, and that allows for widespread agreement among America's citizenry when it comes to the most fundamental questions of what does it mean to be human, what are the kinds of conducts that are befitting for human beings.
We talked about the Stamp Act, and I never put it together, but I understand why now the First Amendment's the First Amendment. I think most people think this was just a handful of white men who put together the Declaration of Independence, but they really were a highly educated, group of people, the colonists, weren't they? Well-read?
Yes, the colonists as a whole were very well read. They were literate in part because of the Protestant impulse of part of Protestantism is the desire to be actually able to read the word
Right.
And so Americans were remarkably literate compared to other countries because they wanted to be able to read the Bible. And John Adams says, an American who is illiterate is as rare as a comet or an earthquake, right? So it's very, very widespread.
Always very dramatic he was, but yeah.
Yes. You can rely on John Adams for that, right? But I think it's a mistake to think that the Declaration of Independence or something was the beliefs of a select group of people. It was very widespread. So Thomas Jefferson himself writes this, that it was an expression of the American mind. These are not ideas that he came up with personally. Those were ideas that were expressed in state constitutions, in the Virginia Declaration, that much of the language is similar to the Declaration of Independence. So the belief in these concepts was not confined to the select group of founding fathers. It was the founding generation as a whole that committed to these things.
Well, Brenda, one last question here, and we are grateful for your time today. You wrote in another piece for Heritage, the real authors of the founding, and you noted that everyday Americans, not just the great statesmen, were instruments in the founding of the country because they were so read, because they talked about these things, right? Which people don't realize. It's just not like they all got in Philadelphia and came up with this, right? They had state constitution. I mean, what percentage of was in the Declaration of Independence in our Constitution came from state constitutions, would you say, the concepts?
I think the equality principle in particular is in the majority of the state constitutions. So these are ideas that are developed over time in America, and so that's why the Declaration is, in a sense, a beginning, but it's in a sense a culmination of this widespread belief and development within America. And I think that's really beautiful. And the other thing to remember is we are a system that is based on consent of the governed because we believe in the equal dignity of human beings. That follows. And so until the American people ratify the Constitution, it has no power. It doesn't matter that the Founding Fathers wrote this document. The American people, through special conventions, breathe life into it. And until then, it's an empty parchment, they say. So it's ultimately the sovereign American people that give the Declaration of Independence its value, that have to subscribe fidelity to the Declaration and give the Constitution its force.
We've had 250 great years. We're hoping for another 250 more. Final question. How can everyday Americans make a difference today in righting our country right now? We have some divisions. What do we need to be doing?
Well, I think civic engagement is so incredibly important. And Alexis Tocqueville writes about instinctive patriotism versus reflexive patriotism. And reflexive patriotism you inculcate by having a knowledge of your country. And a good way to do that is to read the primary source documents, particularly on this anniversary, the Declaration of Independence, and to know what that means. And that helps guard against distortions of our history when you know the primary source documents. Yeah. And that by taking up your civic rights and responsibilities, you have a...
Did we lose Brenda?
Stake in your country. And you begin to, it's not just instinctive, but built in knowledge. And so that's something that I would encourage American citizens to do today, to participate, to take up their rights and also their duties, and to relearn our history and the Declaration of Independence and Constitution in particular.
Brenda Lapeyre, Assistant Director and Research Fellow for the Simon Center for American Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for joining us on the show, and we hope you'll join us again soon in the future.
It's a pleasure. Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day to you. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back.
Murder, mystery, secrets untold. The truth gets set free when we get a hold. Crimes where killers roam off free, or even ones where they get caught at the scene. From cold case files to headline news, she's breaking it all down just for you. So come take a seat, don't miss a beat. These crime corners where
So today, in honor of 4th of July, I found us an unsolved 4th of July case.
A 4th of July murder mystery.
Yes, how not great, but for the situation. How nice for the theme.
Well, it's
for the theme.
I suppose it is useful to have for the show, but I'm not sure how I feel about that now.
Yeah. Okay, well, so this one's actually very interesting. We've talked about in the past. If you haven't tuned in, you better go back and look at them. But we discussed the Satanic Panic. Now, this case kind of revolves around that and the era of it, and I think the Satanic Panic from it caused it to not be solved.
I mean, this is right when I grew up, so
Yeah.
you're in my wheelhouse, right? Like, we loved this stuff as preteens and teens, like in that era. We were into the gore.
I love
I'm just
that.
saying.
I love that. Okay, so July 4th, 1988, 16-year-old Shane Stewart and 18-year-old Sally McNally went out in San Angelo, Texas to go watch some fireworks by the lake. And a little backstory, Shane and Sally had previously joined a satanic cult, and they had friends that were concerned about it. Their parents were a little concerned about it.
Oddly enough, this never seems to work out very well for the people joining them, but okay.
Join a cult, end up dead. Sorry, yeah. I said it. So they went to go see the fireworks, right? And they took his orange Camaro, and his dad said he loved this Camaro, which is an important point of the story because he would have never abandoned it or left it behind. A man never leaves his Camaro behind, right?
I'm saying I actually remember now that from this story, that Camaro, it was a pretty souped up. It was a nice Camaro.
Yeah, it was.
It was not the base model.
It was a Chevrolet Camaro, and it was like a little sport model. It was like a burnt orange color, so people didn't miss this car.
That's a hot color.
And it was left at the lake, keys on the dash, junk food wrappers in the front seats, and no bodies, no nothing. But there was one instance that was later reported of a fisherman who was on the lake who had heard yelling and had seen like the silhouettes of them, but it was too dark to see the car or anything. And he drove away in his boat because he was like, I think they're okay. And turns out they were missing. So there was a lot of assumption about, did they run off? Like, did they try to go get married? Because young kids, like young love, and they're already in cult activity, so they're a little bit on edge and crazy. No, they finally found their bodies months after in a nearby location, but still far enough from the lake to where it was a little odd. And they were both shot and killed. Now, prior to them going to the 4th of July fireworks and joining this cult and everything, well, actually after them joining the cult, they wanted to leave the cult because one of the members gave them a firearm, and I guess he had a big toy box of these firearms where he said this was used for a robbery and a murder. So Sally kind of got a little scared from that, and she invited one of the sheriffs over to her and Shane's apartment at the time that they'd been renting together. And they gave it to the sheriff. She noted that, I am scared that because we're trying to cut ties, like somebody might try to kill us. Like the person who gave us this gun, they're not going to find out, right? And the cop said, well, I can't make promises, but like we're on it. And then they disappeared. But another really shaking part of this is there has been so many instances now back in 2015 where they reopened the case. They got more DNA evidence around his car. No matches. Later on, they found a match out of the country. Didn't work out. Wasn't a suspect. Didn't work. 2017, they pulled over a man driving in the same town, San Angelo, Texas, and he was, I believe, 44. And he had marijuana in his car, but they also did a deeper search because they kept the prints from old DNA analysis to be able to go back and hopefully with forensic technology.
And they never close murder cases, right?
Never close murder cases. And this man was linked to the case because they found a strand of her hair, Sally's hair, in his place. But yet again, not convicted, still unsolved. It's 2026. This is 2017.
Do we know if this guy had any connection to the cult? This guy that got pulled over
No connection. The only thing they had was the hair, which...
I mean, one of the issues, like I grew up in a small town, right? Everyone in a small town has friends.
Yep.
And so, like, it's in a certain way, it would be easier to commit a major crime in a small town.
Yeah. 4th of July fireworks
Right.
too, like you don't hear anything.
You don't have a lot of strangers around.
Yep, and-
People aren't going to pay that much attention to you.
Exactly. And a lot of their friends too, like Sally's friends specifically, they sparked concern about her well-being and her decision making. Obviously, you join a cult, you're a 19-year-old girl and you're joining a satanic cult. I understand it was the rage of the satanic panic,
You
but
are not starting off this journey well.
Yeah. You're not making the brightest decisions. Like
No.
join a club.
No.
Not a cult.
Right.
Clubs, not cults, guys. And her friends had said that there was an instance too where she invited them to this party, this cult party, and this other person brought a demon in a bottle and Sally started acting weird. So a lot of her friends thought maybe it was like a facade she was playing where she was just, attention-seeking behavior a little bit of, oh, demon, like it's possessing me. But
I would assume that
yeah.
myself. I mean,
yeah. And then the other weird part was they found a fortune cookie in her pocket, a fortune cookie wrapper, when they found her body. And it said, you will always be surrounded by friends. So there was another theory of, did her friends kill her?
Interesting.
Right? Still unsolved. So hopefully, as long as technology keeps advancing, maybe we'll find the killer one day.
This strikes me as one that you probably, if it's ever solved, it's because somebody on their deathbed confesses to the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody last minute being like, hey,
Yeah.
I did it. Okay, bye.
Yeah,
This is-
who knows?
So I guess the lesson, though, is when you guys are watching fireworks and enjoying your 4th of July, be aware of your surroundings still. Be aware of your surroundings, because fireworks are the perfect murder situation.
There you go, folks. For your 4th of July, is it sesquicentennial? Did I get that right?
Semi-quincentennial.
Semi-quincentennial. Okay,
It's
listen,
a tongue
it's
twister.
250 years.
Wait till
Let's just go with
350.
that.
It's going to keep getting harder and harder to say.
Well, yeah, no, look, and I'm bad at this. As we know, my pronunciation of almost any word or name I have not encountered is likely to be awful.
It's okay. I said myrtle last week instead of murder.
Well, there's a myrtle bush, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone has been killed in
Myrtle Beach.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Myrtle's a word.
Big plans for the 250th?
Definitely probably not going to watch fireworks.
Okay, you're not going
I'm a little
to
scared
a
now.
lake to watch fireworks?
Yeah, I got in my not in a lake. Yeah, definitely not at a lake, but probably like big group fireworks are safe.
I feel like we live in Phoenix. You're not at much
Yeah.
risk of a private fireworks ceremony.
Sam, these stories instill panic in me. I have to be aware because in my mind now, I'm like, there's serial killer. Like he could be a serial killer. He could be a serial killer. Jeremy, I don't think Jeremy's a serial killer, but anybody could be a serial killer.
Jeremy is. He says he's not a serial killer yet. He's working on it.
Got it. Well, when you do, let me know if you got a story.
I think I'm good right now, but I appreciate it. Thanks for the backup.
Of course.
Well, you know what? The way things have gone lately, maybe everyone out there has considered being a serial killer at
think
one
so.
time or another. I think it's just a very poor idea. Generally, bad choice.
So don't join cults.
Don't become a serial killer.
Aware of yourself while watching fireworks, and don't become a serial killer.
And celebrate America.
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd we...
We
Okay,
love America.
We have a strange show sometimes.
Yeah, that's okay.
People seem to like it.
Give us a 5-star review if you like it.
See?
Leave us a comment.
Is it that hard?
No.
It's not.
You know where to find us, too.
Come on.
Come on.
And we are going to have, we will have the link to the Declaration Challenge up on our social medias. So if you want to check that out for you and your family, I think that's a great opportunity. Want to thank all of our guests today. Once again, we always love having everybody on this program. I think we have maybe the best guest list on the air these days. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of the variety, in terms of, a broad base of knowledge and ideas. And frankly, we're always, look, if you're out there and you're like, I'm a Democrat, I listen to your show, I want to hear more from the other side, well, tell your people to come on with us because we asked them. They just aren't here. So, tell them to join us. We are not mean on the air.
This is for everybody.
I'm only mean on social media.
I love that.
Well, it is what it is, right? You got to get your entertainment out some way. And I was born in the East Coast in the 80s, which means I like to tell people, our version of a love letter to each other was a bunch of insults followed by a random fist fight in a parking lot. That's just how we grew up. We like it. I've just had to limit that to social media because these days you get arrested for doing that in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, strange discourse, folks, but we do want to say, as always, we really appreciate all of our listeners, and we are very excited for America's anniversary coming up here. Everybody on this program, I think we always try to include things, leading into these shows that are relevant to these type of holidays. But this one is special. I know there has been a lot of controversy basically just because of Trump, right? That he's the president during the 250th, and so you have a large portion of the country that's basically saying, I don't want to celebrate it. Well, I would tell you this. You're not going to like most of the other countries on this earth better than you like this one. If you lived there, you really are not. So try it if you want, but you're going to find there are things about America that we can all celebrate. There are things that we can come together with and we can all celebrate. And one of those things is the vision of people who said, we're not good enough, but we want to be. Mm-hmm. And that's what this country has always been about. It's about being better tomorrow than we were today. And so hopefully we get back to that and we stop fighting amongst each other and we start focusing on fixing the real problems we have. And one great way to do that is by getting the politics out of it and coming together over those moral principles, as we were talking about today, and all the values that are written into those founding documents like the Declaration. So on behalf of Chuck, B, Jeremy, Aaron, all our fantastic crew, thank you so much for joining us once again. And Breaking Battlegrounds will be back next week.